Hi everyone, I'm Saleha Singh and welcome to A Multicultural Affair. Joining me tonight on my program is Dr. Harpreet Singh, my family GP and who I trust explicitly. So I thought he should come and be part of my program. Hello, Harpreet.
Oh, hello, Sarah. That's very sweet of you. Very nice to be on board. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Would you like to tell my viewers something about yourself first before we start with the questions?
Sure, there's not too much to say. So, look, I came to Australia when I was 7 years old. I grew up in WA actually, so I'm a Perth boy, and I graduated from UWA. I did my schooling and then my medical degree there. I came to Melbourne about 20 years ago, and Melbourne's my second home now. Got a lovely wife and two kids. One's in uni, one's in high school. I'm a GP in Glen Waverley, and I love the job that I do, and we love looking after people. We have a clinic. There's about 10 of us there. There's about 10 doctors. So all different cultures, all different social groups. Lots of multi-skilled doctors that join us.
Yes, I know. Yes. I'll start with some of the questions that I have. And I know you're open to questions. So if we do get any live questions, I'll read it out and
Sure.
also show you the questions. Stage 4 restrictions, hopefully stage 3 soon. How do we continue to keep safe?
So it's a tough one, isn't it, being in this place here at the moment, and especially when the rest of the country is moved on, and it feels like Victoria is doing this on its own. But look, it is, these stages are designed to keep us safe, as hard as they are, as critical as we are of them. This is a disease worth containing. So, and that means looking after ourselves and looking after each other and looking after the community. So the numbers are coming down. The numbers are great today, and that means that what we're doing is working. And as long as people stay the course, then there'll be a path out. And I think that sort of positivity is important, to know that there is a path out. Now, we all have a little role to play in each of it. So when people wonder what they should do and how to stay safe, the rules are actually quite clearly laid out. And I think that as long as we understand them and we follow them reasonably conscientiously, we can make a difference here. I think the first thing is that if you keep yourself healthy, both physically and mentally, you're going to be in a far better position, especially in case you contract the virus. You're in a better place. So obviously, sleep well and do exercise when you can, and eat really healthy and stay positive, and don't drink too much alcohol, and try and maintain your general health. See your doctors, use teleconsults, don't neglect your health. Make sure you take your medications and get regular checkups, even if it is just over the phone initially with your doctor. So we're lucky now that they've introduced these teleconsultations. So you can see your GPs, you can see your therapists. There's lovely resources online, so use them. The other part is to actually try not to get the virus, obviously, and try not to spread it to other people. This particular virus is a respiratory virus. It means it spreads through respiratory droplets, which means when you cough and when you spread respiratory particles, saliva particles, that's how you're going to spread it. It'll either land on surfaces and somebody touches it and touches their face or nose, or you cough directly on them and they inhale it and they catch the infection. So if you think of how it spreads, then it becomes really obvious how you would avoid getting it. So firstly, wearing a mask, it's probably the simplest thing you can do. For a long time, it was don't need to wear a mask, don't need to wear a mask. But I think over time it's evolved. It's pretty obvious that masks do work, mainly to stop you giving it to other people. But it's nice that other people aren't giving it to you and you're not giving it to other people. And if the whole community is using them, it builds community trust. And it's nice to know that everyone's caring and trying not to pass it on. And the reason why it's so important is that there are a proportion of people, and we don't really know how many, who spread the virus and don't know they have it. So by wearing a mask, if you're one of those people that are spreading it and don't know, well, you are protecting other people, and those other people are protecting you. So good hygiene, obviously. So washing your hands is as easy as that. And you don't need hand sanitizers everywhere. Just the ability to wash your hands regularly, especially if you go outside and go shopping and touch things that aren't in your immediate sort of safe vicinity. Otherwise, if you don't have access to washing it, just hand sanitizers do work. And obviously, don't touch your face, don't touch your nose and your eyes. Do that as little as possible. Or if you're washing hands regularly, then that should keep you pretty safe. But being mindful not to introduce infection to you. Social distancing is a huge part of it. The virus can only kind of spread certain distances. So if you're separate by a certain amount, then it's very hard for it to get to you. So it's still worth always practicing it, especially this stage of it. That's really important. But as the stage lifts, there's no need to go off and interact with everybody face-to-face and closely. You want to limit your group. You want to try not to have too many people that you're interacting with. And if you do, keep that separation there. Getting used to that's kind of the path we're taking. Obviously, close friends you'll get closer to, and less close friends you try and maintain some distance when you can. Try to avoid spreading it to other people who are at risk. So, if you've got elderly parents, if you know people who've got medical conditions that put them at higher risk, then it's important to be extra cautious with them. Give them more space, be more mindful that you could have it and spread it to them. You may get the disease and get a very mild course of it, but you could spread it to somebody who's vulnerable and make them really sick. So taking care of yourself, being generally well, practicing good social distancing and understanding how viruses spread and be mindful of how to protect yourself, and then be very mindful about protecting other people. And I think that as a community will take us through. We will get the vaccine eventually, and even if we don't, viruses like this do kind of burn themselves out. So we just need to protect the vulnerable while we're going through it. Hello, dogs.
Yes, my dogs are going crazy.
I'm getting a cheer squad in the background. That's good.
Another thing that I keep thinking of is what are the impacts of this virus, and where do we get the correct information, especially if we don't understand, read or write English. And we have many people in the community, in the wider community, who have this problem.
So I'll start with the first part then. So, which was the impact of the virus, right? Look, it is a nasty virus. For a little while, the thinking was that maybe it's just the normal flu. There's no doubt it's a lot worse than the flu.
Yep.
And what's difficult about it is that the flu usually shows symptoms really early. This can take 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, you can have this thing and maybe even spread it and don't even know. And the other problem with it is that it seems to not affect too many people that badly, which means you could have it, not be too sick with it and think there's not much wrong with you, and yet you could spread it to someone who could get very sick with it. And so the impact of the virus is that if you're pregnant or if you're elderly, if you've got diabetes, if you've got chronic medical conditions, if you're from the Indigenous population, you're at much higher risk of getting serious infection, which can cause pneumonia and kidney failure, and people die from this, as you know. It's quite a nasty infection. While the vast majority of people get like a mild cold or flu. They can get a bit of a runny nose, a sore throat, maybe a bit of a fever, really minor symptoms. So it's really important to recognize that there is no such thing anymore as a mild cold or a flu anymore. The truth is, yeah, it is, and that's probably what it is, but you can never know that that's all you've got. And so the rule is, if you have anything that would suggest you have a bit of a cold, you have to get tested. Not because anything will change for you, because you'll still probably get over it, but because you need to isolate and you need to contact trace everybody that you're being in contact with, and you need to make sure that you don't spread it to vulnerable people. And the only way you'll know that is to be tested. So when you get tested, you'll go home, you'll isolate yourself, you won't go out. The results are now very quick. You can get a result within 12 to 18 hours now.
Oh, really?
Seeing results come even quicker than that. So results will come within 24 hours these days. The testing capacity is really ramped up. You should get tests the results very quickly. So you're not having extended periods of isolation. There's also now really good supports by the government for people who test positive. So if you test positive, even if you've got mild symptoms, you practically have to isolate yourself for about 10 days. That's how long it takes for you not to be contagious anymore. It ranges 10 to 14 depending on the severity of your infection. But in those 10 days, obviously, you're locked down harder than anyone else. It just depends on what stage you're in. Of course, right now, everyone's locked down, but at that phase of it, you're locked down very hard. And the government is providing funding. There's like $1,500 if you're forced to lock down and you can't work. And there's even people who live alone who can't get access to food, who don't have friends or family who could provide them food. The government will actually organise that for you. So there are supports for people in that circumstance. So it is important that we as a community make sure that when we do this to people, we make it doable. You know, don't make it impossible. And make sure that they get through it and feel they were supported. And half of that is looking out for each other. And, you know, if you've got friends and family that are in any sort of lockdown, then stepping up and saying, look, I can drop things over and I won't come in, but I can call you. We can do Skype consult. We can do Skype face-to-faces like that. We can, so you know that you're not alone and you're not being ignored because maybe you've got this disease that everyone scared of. Yeah.
So
what was the second part of your question?
Sorry. Harpreet, what exactly are, when you said mild symptoms, what can they be?
Okay, so the problem is some people get no symptoms at all and carry it and can spread it. We actually don't know what proportion of people they're going to be, but they definitely do exist. So they're the scary ones because you can't isolate those ones. So if they're spreading it, they don't even know it. That's very difficult. And then there are people who are spreading it before they get the symptoms. Again, they're very difficult. And the only way you can mop those up is find them when they do present and then contact trace aggressively. So it is a respiratory virus. So the corona group of viruses are actually a common group of viruses. There's a whole range of them actually, and they're around. And you've probably had a coronavirus infection in the past. It just causes a mild cold. It also happens in animals, and typically animal coronavirus doesn't cross into humans, but that does happen. And when it does happen, it can be like this, which is what this is thought to originate from, an animal to human transfer and then human to human transfer. But it is a respiratory virus. That means it primarily causes respiratory, that's lung and upper airway symptoms. So the most common symptoms are going to be low-grade fevers, sore throat, runny nose, dry cough. There's an unusual one where you can lose your sense of taste or smell, which is strange. And also you can get worsening difficulty breathing, shortness of breath, as a progression of it. So it really does mimic a simple normal cold or runny nose that's getting worse and worse. It can extend to being a really bad flu, and then it can expand to be a significant lung infection and lung inflammation, which causes difficulty breathing and ending up in hospital and then ICUs.
And the second part of the question, which was where do we get the correct information, especially
Yes, that's right. You were saying, especially if English isn't your first language or English isn't part of your language sphere at all, that is really difficult. And I think that's probably one of the early failings was that in the rush to get everything done, that part of it got kind of neglected. But there's been real moves to try and fix that. And one of the paths of that is much more community-focused education. So people in your community would then go to their community members and give them good information and support them. It's nice and easy to say, here's some translated flyers and here's some videos and watch this, but often the translation process isn't very clear, and sometimes the language isn't great, and sometimes the language that one person thinks is being used isn't really understood very well. And then if people start leaning on sources like social media and Facebook, then you wonder the quality of the information people are going to get. And that's unfortunate because that's through no fault of their own, because there's no other sources of that information, especially from this country. Why should they be going overseas to find this information when they should be getting it here? So there are definitely some good translated services now on the DHHS website and Vic Health website. We can do those links later if that's possible.
Yes, absolutely.
They do have those translations, but I think since now that we have teleconsultations with doctors, Medicare funded teleconsultations where you can actually have a consultation through a phone or even a video with a doctor, then going to your own doctors, especially if they're language aware, is a really good first step, because they can simplify the information for you and certainly pass on the salient information. And if your doctor doesn't speak fluently the language that you need, every doctor in this country has access to the translation services. It's called TIS, Translation Something Services. Anyway, every doctor has access to that. And it is a third party, so you ring through and the person with that language will be on the phone and the doctor will speak to them and then they will speak to the patient and back. But it is a useful thing to be able to hear it in your own language and directly translated by a skilled translator who does medical translations too. So there are ways. It's not fabulous, I agree, but it is possible to get that information. The other thing is obviously be mindful where you're getting your information from. Always be a little bit suspicious of information coming from Facebook or videos without any good, I guess, corroboration of the evidence that's being presented. Yeah. You want to make sure that you're getting good quality information, because during times of stress, during times of this sort of trauma, people clutch on to things and want reassurance, and that's useful and good. But at the same time, truth is always paramount. You know, good quality information, being honest about what you do know and don't know. There's so much we don't know about this virus, and that upsets people. But I think it's important to say there's so much we don't know. I find a lot of people get frustrated when you say one thing first, and then a few months later or a few weeks later or days later, you say the complete opposite thing, and they think, well, what do they know? How can they keep changing? And for me, that's the beauty of science, the fact that we will change what we do based on what the evidence presents, that we won't stick to something just because it was what we thought of first or originally. So when this all started, there was a big push not to have everyone wear masks. Yes. And now everyone should wear masks. And it seems a real contradiction of policy to do something like that. And how do you explain to someone who's reading old information? You know, I went to a shop and it says, and there were rules, and one of them was no need to wear a mask, and it was still there, and yet that was wrong. I mean, it was old flyers that hadn't been changed, everyone knew. But the fact is that it does cause people to get confused when that happens.
Of course.
So I think understanding that this is a very evolving thing, and the beauty of science is that we will pivot, we will change, we will accept what the best evidence is and go for it. And if something doesn't work, we will say it, and we'll apologize for it, but we won't change anything. We won't stick to it just because it was convenient at that time.
And science is always evolving, isn't it?
It is. I think that's the beauty of it, is that it will evolve, it will change, and unless you do change with it, it then becomes this dogma that, and the truth gets lost somewhere in that. Yeah.
How do we cope with the virus in the coming months, especially in summers? You know, when wearing a mask at 40 degrees may not be a very easy thing to do.
No, I'm dreading that already, actually, and this should be interesting. There's no easy answer to that question, of course. If there was an alternative, then great. But the reality is the masks are here to stay for a while. And I think the way people should look at it is that some compromises have to be made. And the best compromise, I think, is that if you can keep wearing masks, then you'll be allowed to go and meet people and interact face to face and do more things, and the shops will be open. And I think that's a small price to pay for that next step. Because if we stay this way, it gets worse, and people get more depressed, and more jobs get lost, and the economy fails, and suicide rates up, and depression, anxiety rates go up, and people lose their homes. It's just awful what could happen. So if it means the discomfort of a mask, then so be it. Now, the question everyone should ask is, well, what's the evidence? And I think that's a really fair question that everyone should be entitled to ask.
Yes.
What's the evidence that masks actually help? And so that's still coming, and that's the important thing. I think it's important to say that so far the early evidence is, yes, this is a really good way to do it. And then when the clear evidence comes, then we should change. If the evidence shows that the masks are useless, then we should accept that and try something different. But yeah, you suck it up, you wear it, and you say, I'm not just looking after me, I'm looking after my neighbor, my friend, my parents, my community, and we're all in this together. And I think that's a nice way to put it, that we are kind of all in this together. It affects everybody. There'll be nobody that won't be affected if we let this go.
Absolutely.
If not necessarily directly to yourself, you'll know somebody who's important to you that will be affected. So let's all work through it together and make it easier for each other by looking after each other.
I think we also have to be mindful about our get-togethers, because that's a big part of our lives, isn't it? Get-togethers, not to have 10 people.
Yeah. So I think that we have to trust in the advice being given by the health authorities to the state government, who then makes the policy. It's always reasonable to question it, as I already said. Questioning is wonderful in all aspects, so I think that's good to do. But there will be a gradual path. And, you know, the key, I think, is that as we are moving to open things up, it's very important that people pull out early if they think that they might have it. It's as simple as that. The best thing you can do is, if you think you might have it, and like I said, there's no such thing as a common cold anymore. If you get any suggestion of a mild cold, then by definition, you technically should, by definition, say to yourself, I think I have it, and you should get tested. You should pull out, protect everybody else, get cleared quickly. And like I said, that happens really fast now. Go back in society and say, I did my job, I did my duty, I looked after the community, I looked after my family, I looked after the people that care about me. And so I think that will be the path out, is go to your social groups, keep them small, keep the distance as much as you can. If you're not well, don't go. Everyone will understand now. No one's going to mind that you didn't come because you didn't feel quite well or you weren't sure, and keep slightly separate and keep wearing masks. I think that's the way we're all going to have to just be pragmatic about it, look at it sensibly and find ways.
For the next year at least.
Look, yeah, and we're all hanging out and hoping the vaccine works and it comes and it works and it's safe and we can all get it quickly and it provides some immunity. So then it'll be like another normal flu thing that we protect the high-risk people for, but most of us will just sort of manage it. And I think that's the future. So I think the most important message is that this will go away. It will settle down. We will go back to some sort of normality, I would hope. Yeah.
What will be the consequences of this virus? Do you think there are
consequences? That's the thing. Yeah, so it's a physical health stuff, which is pretty obvious, and people will, a significant proportion. If you're over 65 and get this virus, it's significant. You need to be extra cautious. If you have, as I said, if you're diabetic or pregnant or have immune disorders, have chronic diseases, if you're elderly, that puts you at much higher risk. Funny enough, kids seem to be protected. Again, that information is still filtering through as it does, but kids are far less likely to get very sick from it. They can obviously infect others, but they're far less likely to get sick of it, which is very strange because flu tends to be both kids and the elderly. So it's odd that it seems to skip those, which is nice because kids going back to school, it'll be safer for them to be there. And we know that schools will open early, which is, I think, a reasonable first step for something like this. But there's also the consequences of fear. The mental health consequences of living in this situation of a pandemic. It is a frightening time for people, especially if all you see is the numbers of people dying around the world. It's a terrifying thing, and it's so easy to get fixated and focus and forget that there's other things in life too, and that that there are other things that will do you harm. So like I said at the beginning, it's important to look after yourself as well. There's no point surviving the corona and then not ignoring that mole that you had that's now melanoma, or that breast lump that you've been ignoring because you're too scared to go to the doctor, or your diabetes that's completely out of control. It's really important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak here. Yeah, it's worth, sorry about that turn of phrase, but it just means don't throw babies out.
Don't throw babies out, although they can be pretty annoying at times. I know.
It just means, don't sacrifice your own health for this fear. Yeah, so it's important to do that. But then there's also the effect on the economy, and you can't pretend that this lockdown hasn't had severe effects on the economy. People have lost jobs and lost livelihoods and lost homes, and families gone into conflicts, and that has devastating consequences too, and that has to be counted as part of the cost of it. It had to be done. There's no doubt about it that it had to happen, but at the same time, you have to not just focus on protecting people from getting the disease. You need to find a path to help these people who've been affected economically and socially and emotionally, mentally, to find a path out of it. So, and luckily there has been a focus on that now. There are a lot more support services available. There's a lot more funding for mental health services. It's much easier to get access to mental health care in all languages too, and all cultural groups and communities. And so it is there. And I think that the most important message is help is there. Don't be afraid or ashamed or embarrassed to go there and ask for it or go get it, because it is there. It is there. I think the fear obviously is that you can ask and it won't be there, and that's not good. But it is there. I think it's reasonable to tell people to go look for this. But that's the side of it. So there's the physical stuff, there's the mental health effects, there's the economic, social effects of it. There's the effect on kids and their schools and their education. And I feel very sorry for the year 12 kids this year, all you year 12s out there, hang in there tough. They will try and look after you. I think that's reasonable. You just remember that you're in with a lot of other year 12 kids in this year, so you're not alone. Yeah. And it might feel like you're alone, but you're not. And so the schools are trying to step up and make this better for you. And there are mental health support services available, especially for kids too. And that's important to remember. You don't have to do it on your own. Yeah.
So along with the physical health also comes the issue of mental health and well-being.
Of course.
How do you keep your motivation up when, during these really trying times? It's not been easy for anyone.
Yeah. Look, I think that's such a hard question, isn't it? Because it is so tough to stay positive. As I said, you switch on the news every day and we're all obsessively watching today's numbers and you're seeing countries like India and Brazil and the US and how awful things are. And a lot of us from multicultural communities are going to have families outside, and we're locked into Australia, and you try and leave Australia, you're stuck outside too. You can't come back to your family.
Minimum 6 months, yes.
And that's such a terrifying thing to think that if your family needs you, you can't even go there to help them. And that's got to be very traumatic to have to confront that you can't be there. And it's same the other way. Your family can't come to you. They're not allowed in. Even the citizens are sitting in places outside, not able to come in. So I guess we have to do the best we can with the technology and the things that we have. If you think back to the Spanish flu, can you imagine how hard it was for everybody then with no kind of communication except posts and things? We are far more connected. We are used to social media, and I think that it's not perfect. It's nowhere near as good as the face-to-face, but it is something. And I think that we have to then, I think people are getting a lot kinder because of this. I've just noticed that people are a lot kinder. They're a lot more understanding. They're much more supportive. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that doing it together and feeling it's difficult and then expressing it and talking about it is probably a really important thing. So number one is don't be ashamed or embarrassed that it's hard, because it is hard, and it's okay to know it's hard and feel it. And it's okay to be upset and distressed at times. I think it's good to acknowledge that it's okay. There is no stigma in that. We're all doing it together, and it's hard for everybody. The second thing is to try and normalize as much as you can. Try and shower every day and get dressed every day, and don't stay at home and have no plan. Have plans, do things, be active. The most important thing I think to do is exercise. Just keep moving. You're only allowed 1 or 2 hours at the moment. It's 2 hours now, which is nice.
Yes,
but
2 hours, yes.
You have backyards, if you've got indoor areas that you can exercise. Exercise is a vital part of mental health and physical health. And it's surprising how much exercise is part of mental health. So move, do stuff. Getting sunlight is really important as well, especially us with darker skins. Not having enough sunlight is actually not good for us, and to get deficient in vitamin D, it's a problem. So it may be worth even speaking to your doctor and asking for a vitamin D test if you've been spending a lot of time indoors. And taking some supplements might not be a bad idea. I'm not generally a big proponent of taking supplements for well people who could eat and exercise, but in these circumstances, you know what, it might not be unreasonable to do that. In terms of mental health care, looking out for each other, I think, is important too. Recognize that having private space for yourself is important. You're gone from seeing each other in a limited number of hours in a day to being in each other's pockets, and that's got to be hard.
Very hard, very hard. 24/7. Yes.
Yes, and I think you realize how much you like a person if you don't spend too much time with that person. So
agreed.
You can make little isolation bubbles. Isn't that strange? We're trying to get people together, and now I'm saying isolate, but you can make little isolation bubbles for yourself. Sacrosanct time that's just for you, and it's okay to have some me time, to do your own thing, to have your own thoughts, to listen to your own music, to watch your own show, to eat your own food, to have a time to meditate and think and read a book, and it's okay. I think I think that's important for everyone to respect that. The other thing I think is in a household is people should help each other. I'm not terribly great at that as well, but you should try. Share the load. You know, you've gone from having usually one person in the home and one person out, or sometimes a mix of both. But when you come together again, it's worth sharing the load of the house things, shopping and cleaning and keeping things in order. And it's nice to feel that. And I guess I actually like the concept of revisiting relationships. You know, have date nights, have time that's just special. Candlelit dinners at home. It's not a terrible thing to do, especially since you can Uber things in, or shouldn't use words like Uber. Well, get someone to deliver things in, and you know, it's important to be a little bit think off center. And we've been doing this for months and months, and it's possible we're going to be doing it for another 2-3-4 weeks. If you're in isolation, it's again. So getting used to making a home environment a warmer, friendlier, comfortable environment where you can still do interesting things, I think is a good thing too. And use your internet. Can't say that enough. There's a lot you can do. You could do online courses. You could make interesting groups of friends that do interesting things, have group chats, parties, get-togethers, get used to it, be involved, be included. It's the new way of doing things, and it's time we got used to it. And it's really great for the younger generation who are already used to doing it. It's something our generation has to get better at and feel comfortable doing. I use the technology that we have. Yeah. What was the other part of your question?
The other part of the question for me is very important, being a woman. What do women do? You know, they're looking after the house, they're working, they have children. And you know, mental health is not priority number one.
No.
And we don't want to talk about it. It's just the way that we have been brought up. I think it's been a taboo from the beginning, and although we've all moved away from our birthplaces and come and live here, we still do not want to talk about it. What would you
No. Gosh, that makes it really hard, doesn't it? Because that's the thing. The treatment and the way to manage this is to talk about it. And that's the main barrier. How do you overcome that? I think that's probably the hardest part of it. We get brought up in certain ways. We have certain values. It becomes a stigma to say that you're not coping. You're the person that everyone leans on, so you should never ask for other people help. And you get into this state where you're the person everyone goes to, therefore you could never have a moment of frailty or insecurity. And that's walls we build for ourselves, which is funny. Yeah, we build these walls to ourselves. We're our own worst enemy when it comes to this. And I call people out the rocks. You know, these people are solid people that everyone leans on, and that's the persona they have built for themselves. And the problem is the rocks of the world don't really have an emotional outlet. They don't want to express it, so they internalize it and hold it. And so they're the ones that can get far more physical symptoms of their distress because, as I said, no emotional outlet. Well, there's got to be some outlet, so they physicalize it. So you find irritability becomes a problem, short-temperedness, poor concentration, fatigue, poor sleep, insomnia, restlessness. You can even get chest pain and headaches and migraines from significant stress that's sort of internalized and compartmentalized. Weight gain, weight loss, both sides. Just the sense of not coping, of being disappointed in yourself. All these things are signs that, you know what, maybe the stress is affecting you, and it's worth kind of exploring that and then externalize it. So the point number one is that it is okay to talk about it, and talking to a professional, I think, in certain circumstances like this especially, is a great idea. If you don't feel you can go to friends, go to your GP first. I'm a GP, so I'm always going to say that first because I think GPs do a great job here, and they can guide you. They can show you where the support services are. They can show you talk to. I'm a big fan of external support services for certain groups of people. What I mean by that is that technically you're paying someone to not be your friend, to not judge you, you're not trying to impress them, they're not trying to impress you. Everything that you say is left in the space of those four walls in a very secure environment. That is a chance to let go. that is a chance to express things and know that it's in a very secure environment. Every once in a while, I think it's really important to be able to completely freely express some of the stuff that goes on inside, because continuing to hold that in is not really great for you. So finding that space. Now, that could be family and friends. Some people who are very stoic find that very difficult because it means admitting that they're struggling. And this is why I do like this idea of people who are the rocks to have that external, separate, unrelated. You're not going to go and then have to have a cup of tea and talk about the kids afterwards. Do you know what I mean? Or talk about the next holiday you're going to have together. It's completely separate and compartmentalized, which I think is a really good thing. So access that. The other thing I think that's really important is that people who are like this are typically really empathic people, really heartfelt people. You think about it. If you're one of those people and a friend of yours comes to you and says, look, I'm really struggling, I'm difficultly coping, I'm having some relationship problems with my partner or my husband, what do you think I should do? Can you give me some advice? And you would give great advice. You would give really good, supported advice. And all I say to people who are the rocks who do that, I say, why don't you just take your own advice? Why don't you give yourself the same respect that person you gave to them? Why not be kind to yourself too? So whatever advice you would give a friend, you should say to yourself, why don't I take my own advice? Why don't I give myself that same respect, that I care enough about myself to do that? So be kind to yourself is, I think, what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And it's okay. And you've got great advice. You know what to do. I think it's just stepping up and saying that I should look after myself too. Because remember, if you fall apart, a lot of other people fall apart with you.
Yes, yes.
And that's a lot of pressure to carry. And so, you know, when the plane's going down, you put your mask on first, because you can't put anybody else's mask on if you're already unconscious. So put your mask on and then look after everybody else. I think, and then the next part of that is obviously good boundary management, because it's okay to say no. It's okay to say there's only so much I can look after. I think that, you know, I can find somebody who can help you, I can support you, but this is all I can do. And that's probably the hardest part for people who are stoic and the rocks, is that how do you learn to say no when all your life you've been taught that you're only valued because you say yes always? And so, again, a good person, a good counselor can really help you with that boundary management, because, as I said, ultimately it ends up being you're your own worst enemy. Everyone else is never shocked when you eventually say, actually, I'm not coping, and that's so I'm not surprised. How could you be coping? And what you go through is ridiculous, right? Yet when you're the person, you think, well, no one would ever believe you that, you know, you're not coping. They would judge you. And no, most people are never surprised when you tell them that, you know what, I'm struggling too. It's okay. I hope that was useful.
Yes, I think so. I'll have to learn to say no. What would you say to people living by themselves? And
so
there are lots of people living by themselves and doing it very tough.
Agreed. Oh boy, again, that's so hard. And you know that it's bad enough what we do to people who live together. As much as we criticize the whole living together now makes it hard, but you're together and you're supporting each other, and somebody can go to the shop and you can do this, and you know you've got someone to talk to, and can you imagine trying to do all this on your own all the time? That's just so difficult. And I think the way to manage that is that use the technology first. Obviously, you have the technology, so connect. Yeah. Intervene early if you're going downhill. If you're going shy, remember those signs of sort of feeling low and down and not actually having the physical things. Go in early, get some help, speak to your doctor. They'll know when you start talking this way. They'll ask. They'll say that they'll lead you towards maybe coming to the conclusion that maybe that this is affecting your mental health, and then they can provide those support services that you need. And obviously, find ways to connect and go online and do online gyms and social groups. It's surprising how many people are now looking to connect, and so the very act of looking will find you other people. It's not like you've been alone and no one else is looking. There are a lot of people out there looking for some sort of friendship connection now, and even if it's just this way, which is actually not bad for what it could have been. And look after yourself physically, obviously, and that's the challenge too. So still get dressed, still still make the effort to go out, still do your walks and eat healthy, and don't drink too much alcohol. A little bit's good, but just be mindful that that's a trap. All right, we all have coping mechanisms. Unfortunately, there are good coping mechanisms and there's some bad coping mechanisms, and most people kind of know the good and bad. Sometimes it can be blurry, but when it's obviously bad, be careful and talk some and get some help early.
And it's not just alcohol, is it? It's also the food that we eat, because we've got to be mindful now. So healthy eating.
Interesting. So there are two ways this can go in lockdown. You either get a really great diet because you've got complete control of your fridge and what comes into your house, and you're not going out on weekends and going out to restaurants anymore. That can be an opportunity to eat really healthy. And then there's the opposite end, which is you're bored and the fridge is there and you're constantly next to it. It's hard to stop yourself from going to the fridge whenever it just a minute to do that. And the delivery services have really ramped up their services now, so you can get everything sent home. So the temptation to do that is really high. So I guess again, I would try and normalize things as much as possible. Have treat nights, have treat weekends. That's you going out, ordering takeaway, splurging a little bit, enjoying yourself. That's your treat time. Have some drinks with it. Socialize online, share the drinks and food with people and show what you're having. And then for the rest of the week, eat healthy. And the first step of eating healthy is try and make your own food. You're out shopping, you can still go to the supermarkets and things, so be adventurous. There's a huge industry now of people sharing recipe groups and video groups and chat groups, and it's not an industry even, it's just people getting together and doing cooking and saying, what are we making tonight, and look what I made tonight for the family, or this is what we're experimenting with today, and then take pictures and share. I think making it more fun is probably useful. But look, making your own food is obviously the key to healthier food. If you do make your own food, you're much more mindful about what's going in, and ideally, if you can eat food that's nutritious and healthy and rich in vegetables and whole grains and legumes and fruits and good nutritious protein, either the meat variety or the non-meat variety, you'll do great. What you limit is your treat foods, which is typically very processed foods like white bread, white pastas, certainly cakes, biscuits, pastries, and those treats. And no one's saying you can't have them, but remember, they're your treat food. So have them as your treat food and enjoy it. And obviously stay active, keep moving, be busy, exercise. Now, exercise, obviously you can't go out doing it, but there is surprising a lot you can do at home. And resistance work is really important. Keep your muscles toned, keep your muscles stretched. A lot of things like yoga and Pilates and things like that. And certainly getting a stretchy band is a really good way not to have a home gym and just do your own sort of band work. And most of those online paid subscription gym programs or aerobic classes, they pretty well went free. And they just said, okay, everyone, you can just come in and do these classes with us for free, which is really nice. So do some. It's actually quite fun. You can get to move and dance, and you don't get to have anyone else's sweat on you, and you don't have to worry about how you smell, because no one can smell you luckily yet. You're in your own home. You can dress the way you want. You can turn off the video if you're not interested in being on the video. It's good. I think it's nothing wrong with trying new things and doing it different ways. Okay.
I'm going to say this on air. I have actually continued with your advice of eat healthy for 5 days and go wild too. And I do it. And we managed to keep our weight off. And it's amazing how you kind of get used to it.
Yes.
Because, your body is used to eating healthy through the week.
Yes.
If you eat something different, it just doesn't suit you, or you don't feel good. So I actually look forward to Friday nights and Saturday nights, and those are my treat nights, and I can have stuff that I've been yearning through the week. But the rest of the 5 days, from Sunday to Friday afternoon, I am really good, and it is really, really helpful. The mind, you just have to tune your mind, and if you know what you want to do, you get there.
Exactly. And the other thing is to know that you don't have to live in deprivation. You just have to
Absolutely.
moderate it. You have to
Yes.
know that there are times when you can enjoy it. You can't live your life missing out on the fun things that make life wonderful. Great food and great friends and togetherness. And so, yeah, 4 or 5 days a week. Keep it tight. Don't be hungry. Enjoy a
Yes.
really good, healthy, nutritious food and eat to abundance. But have your treat foods too and make them special and make it count. You don't want to have a bag of chips watching TV every night
Yeah.
when on a
Yeah.
Friday night you can have a beautiful lava cake or a lovely big serve of pasta with a beer. I shouldn't say that, but any kind of relaxing treat food, have it, but make it count. Make it something you'll love. Make it rather than have the throwaway bag of chips each night in front of the TV, which you may as well build up and really have a good time with it. Yeah. Yeah.
I did have an apple pie last night, half of it.
Yeah, yum.
That was my treat.
That's good.
Thank you, Harpreet. Thank you for coming to the show and sharing
Thank
all
you.
your advice. It's been really good. And I'm sure I'll see you under better circumstances.
Oh,
Thank
look,
you.
I've had fun too. Thank you very much for inviting me along. I did enjoy it.
Okay, thank
Have a good
you.
night, everybody. Good night.
You have a good night. Bye.
Bye.